boy took them to the cliff where he had been on the previous day. He told them all to be seated. "Going to take a while," the boy said. "We're in no hurry," the chief answered. "We are men of the desert." The boy looked out at the horizon. There were mountains in the distance, and there were dunes, rocks, and plants that insisted on living where survival seemed impossible. "What do you want here today?" the desert asked him. "Didn't you spend enough time looking at me yesterday?" "Somewhere you are holding the person I love," the boy said. "So when I look out over your sands, I'm also looking at her. I want to return to her, and I need your help so that I can turn myself into the wind." "What is love?" the desert asked. "Love is the falcon's flight over your sands, because for him you are a green field from which he always returns with game. He knows your rocks, your dunes, and your mountains, and you are generous to him." "The falcon's beak carries bits of me myself," the desert said. "For years I care for his game, feeding it with the little water that I have, and then I show him where the game is, and one day, as I enjoy the fact that his game thrives on my surface, the falcon dives out of the sky and takes away what I've created." "But that's why you created the game in the first place," the boy answered, "to nourish the falcon. And the falcon then nourishes man, and eventually man will nourish your sands, where the game will once again flourish. That's how the world goes." "So is that what love is?" "Yes, that's what love is. It's what makes the game become the falcon become the man, and man, in his turn, the desert. It's what turns lead into gold and makes the gold return to the earth." "I don't understand what you're talking about," the desert said. "But you can at least understand that somewhere in your sands there is a woman waiting for me, and that's why I have to turn myself into the wind." The desert didn't answer him for a few moments. Then it told him, "I'll give you my sands to help the wind to blow, but alone I can't do anything. You have to ask help from the wind." A breeze began to blow. The tribesmen watched the boy from a distance, talking among themselves in a language that the boy couldn't understand. The alchemist smiled. The wind approached the boy and touched his face. It knew of the boy's talk with the desert because the winds know everything. They blow across the world without a birthplace, and with no place to die. "Help me," the boy said. "One day you carried the voice of my loved one to me." "Who taught you to speak the language of the desert and the wind?" "My heart," the boy answered. The wind has many names. In that part of the world it was called the Sirocco, because it brought moisture from the oceans to the east. In the distant land the boy came from, they called it the Levanta, because they believed that it brought with it the sounds of the desert and the screams of the Moorish wars. Perhaps, in the places beyond the pastures where his sheep lived, men thought that the wind came from Andalusia. But actually, the wind came from no place at all, nor did it go to any place. That's why it was stronger than the desert. Someone might one day plant trees in the desert and even raise sheep there, but never would they harness the wind. "You can't be the wind said. "We're two very different things." "That's not true," the boy said. "I learned the alchemist's secrets in my travels. I have inside me the winds, the deserts, the oceans, the stars, and everything created in the universe. We were all made by the same hand, and we all have the same soul. I want to be like you, able to reach every corner of the world, cross the seas, blow away the sands that cover my treasure, and carry the voice of the woman I love." "I heard what you were talking about the other day with the alchemist," the wind said. "He said that everything has its own personal legend, but people can't turn themselves into the wind." "Just teach me to be the wind for a few moments," the boy said, "so you and I can talk about the limitless possibilities of people and the winds." The wind's curiosity was aroused, something that had never happened before. It wanted to talk about those things, but it didn't know how to turn a man into the wind. And look how many things the wind already knew how to do. It created deserts, sank ships, felled entire forests, and blew through cities filled with music and strange noises. It felt that it had no limits, yet here was a boy saying that there were other things the wind should be able to do. "This is what we call love," the boy said, seeing that the wind was close to granting what he requested. The Simum blew that day as it had never blown before. For generations thereafter, the Arabs recounted the legend of a boy who had turned himself into the wind, almost destroying a military camp in defiance of the most powerful chief in the desert. When the Simum ceased to blow, everyone looked to the place where the boy had been, but he was no longer there. He was standing next to a sand-covered sentinel on the far side of the camp. The men were terrified at his sorcery, but there were two people who were smiling. The alchemist, because he had found his perfect disciple, and the chief, because that disciple had understood the glory of God.